All right, everyone. I am Sunny Cadwallader. Welcome back to another edition of the First in 60s show. We are back and better than ever. Well, at least one of us is better than ever. Russell S. Baxter is my co-host. Hey, Russ, how's it going?
I'm terrific, Sonny, and so are you. Let's not mislead the crowd here and so on. We are back and on a special day this day because I've got some things going on, some trips planned and so on. But we did not want to be, you know, disappoint ourselves actually because we enjoy doing this show more than anything else. But here we are again. Talk some football. We said some great guests tonight, and we got some news that's concerning our show that we're really excited about. And but first things first, how have you been in the 2 weeks since our last performance?
Good. I am been buried in a football of another sort. Yes, I know most NFL fans don't like talking about it, but I've been buried in World Cup stuff, World Cup news organizing, and also paying attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs, which I think is 2-1 right now. Is that right, Russ?
I think the Rangers 2, Kings 1. Well, listen, we're multitasking here, okay?
It's the Stanley Cup final because it's the cup. We got to pay attention. I mean, my team isn't in it, but hey, there's nothing better. I know NFL fans don't crucify me, but there's nothing better than the Stanley Cup playoffs. So.
Well, listen, the Stanley Cup playoffs are fun, and you got two big markets here with Los Angeles, and obviously, I was just left New York when I lived on Long Island, 1994, which is when obviously the Rangers were last in the Stanley Cup Finals and won the Cup that year. That was, they broke a big drought, and that's about the extent of my hockey knowledge. So let's get on to our news, which is the First and 60 show.
Wait, let me do that again. It was
okay.
Operator error. Hang on. Where are we going, Russ?
Ladies, well, we're going to Canton, Ohio, which we have talked to everybody about. And we'll be doing our show live. And the big news is we'll be doing our show live from downtown Canton.
And where are we doing it at?
At TD Tailgates. Gracious enough to host our show on Saturday afternoon from noon until whatever. You might be getting a first and 120 for all we know, because we got a lot of people coming for the show, a lot of representatives from NFL Female, the Draftnik himself, Nick Polinich, will be there. Chad Cetera from Sports Jams is promising to be there. Maybe even the Sports Infusion tandem, the Sonny and Cher of the Airways, Andrew Fish and Pamela Michelle might even be there. And,
Fish might actually show up this time?
Absolutely. He might.
Go.
And listen, Fish can do no wrong in my eyes these days, and that's another reason we're going to throw out here something as well. As you know, ProFootballGuru.com is in the T-shirt business. And, we do giveaways, and we're going to do a giveaway tonight with a trivia question. And for all I know, we might give another one away because I'm closing in on 30,750 followers. And every time we get to 50 or a new 100, we give away a free T-shirt. So keep an eye on my Twitter account, Bax Football Guru. But I don't want to bury the lead here. One of the reasons we're selling the shirts is that 20% of the shirt, which is a $15 shirt, 20% of that shirt, $3, is being donated to the American Cancer Society. And so far we have raised, in a very brief time, $70. But we have raised $140. And the reason I bring that up is because Andrew Fishbane, the Fish, is being a whale of a human being right now. And if you want to follow Fish, it's the Fish 1969 on Twitter. Fish has promised through the month of June, whatever money we raise that goes to cancer will be matched by him penny for penny. So,
that's awesome.
As Chad Cetera said earlier this week, let's make Fish get a second job.
There we go.
So there you go. So
I like that idea.
All right, but let me get to the part about giving away a shirt. Okay, and in a few moments here, we're going to bring in Dana O'Gorman to talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Our two featured teams tonight are the Seattle Seahawks, the defending Super Bowl champions, and the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to have Sean O'Donnell on to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. But let's go to the Seattle Seahawks for a second. They came into the league in 1976 along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, everybody knows, or most football fans know, that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers set a dubious NFL record by losing the first 26 games of their existence in the regular season, finally beat the Saints for win number 27. But people often forget, who did the Seattle Seahawks beat for their first ever win? And whoever comes up with the right answer to me and or Sonny and slugs it, hashtag first and 60, will get a ProFootballGuru.com t-shirt.
I'm still waiting for mine, so I sure hope you guys know the answer to that trivia question, because I hope you guys get the shirt, and I don't have one yet, but I just may have. I'm gonna have to buy mine.
No, Sonny, you'll be getting yours shortly. Okay.
That's okay. I'll buy one. I will buy one. I want to participate. I want to join in and support the cause.
Well, here's the deal for my partner. If you give me $15 for a shirt, partner, that $15 is going toward cancer.
Yeah. See. So okay. I'll buy a shirt.
Right. All 15 goes to cancer. But that's a partner. That's a partner special deal. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll do that. I'm gonna buy one.
Done.
I'm gonna buy one. What else? What else has been going on with you?
Well, we keeping busy obviously with Bleacher Report and Pro Player Insiders, and getting ready to start one of my favorite things to do. It was a series I did for Yahoo last year, and now I'm getting ready to do it again for my website, Pro Football Guru. It's called If and But. And what it has to do with is I'm going to tell you how all 32 teams in the league are going to make the playoffs. If they do this, and they do this. But if they do this, they're not going to make it. So it's my way of unusually previewing the season, and that's something for you to keep an eye on. But
that includes my Raiders, right? That includes my Raiders.
We're going to write about everybody. We'll start with the Houston Texans, and we'll end with the Seattle Seahawks, the defending Super Bowl champions. And since we're on the subject of defending Super Bowl champions, there's no better time to bring in Dana O'Gorman, who knows her Seattle Seahawks, has her own shows, writes for NFL Female. She does an outstanding job covering the Seahawks. Dana, welcome to First and 60 for the very first, but not the last time.
No, I hope not the last time. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Because I know it's not going to be the last time, Dana, because you are one of the many representatives from NFL Female who will be making the trip to Canton, Ohio, as we do our super show. I even told Sonny this, though. The way it's going, with all the people that are interested in coming, is there such a thing as a first and 240?
Maybe. Why not, huh?
No, you never.
No partying the night before, Russ.
No. Well, I have no memories. Well, the beauty of what we're getting to do, just so people a little behind the scenes. One of the reasons we picked Saturday to do the show, and if you've ever been out to the Hall of Fame, and I've been going out there since 1989. As stirring as the speeches are on Saturday evening now, they used to be on Saturday morning. But what has always occurred on Friday night, Hall of Fame weekend, is when the gentlemen get their Hall of Fame jackets. And it is an incredibly moving ceremony because their presenters actually hand them their jackets. And for those who have seen fathers give them to their sons, sons give them to their fathers, daughters give them to their fathers, and brothers, like the Sharp brothers a couple of years ago, give them. It's really something to see. It's a really magical, emotional moment, and so on. And I can't wait for it every year. And we're going to be there in a couple of months. And Dana's going to be there as well, as Walter Jones is part of the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2014. Again, Dana, welcome to the show. And why don't you tell our viewers who are not as familiar with you, which I find hard to believe, a little about yourself.
Sure. I've been writing for NFL Female now for the Seattle Seahawks for the last This is our third season. It's been going on for a while now, and I've been a lifelong Seahawks fan. I've been accused this last season of being a bandwagon fan because, no one had ever heard of a Seahawks fan before this last season, but I grew up in Montana, and we didn't have a pro team, and so you picked one of the two that were closest, and the Seahawks were it for me. And so since about 11, I've been a Seahawks fan. Actually lived in Seattle for quite a few years, and now I live here in Kansas City. So I'm a Seahawks fan stuck in the middle of Chiefs Nation. It's not so much fun, let me tell you that. But like I said, I've been writing for NFL Female and I'm the host of their weekly podcast, Wednesday Night with NFL Female, and I've been doing that for, this is our third season, and I also write for thefootballeducator.com as their fan contributor.
What part of Montana?
I grew up in Great Falls, Montana, smack in the middle of the country, so yeah.
So let me get this straight. You're a Seattle fan who lived in Montana, but now you live in Kansas City where Joe Montana used to play.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, it's weird. I did. Yeah, everyone's like, have you ever lived in Seattle? Yes, we lived in Seattle for years. My daughter was born in Seattle. But yes, we've been a little nomadic. But I take my team with me everywhere I go.
Well, the funniest thing about already what you said tonight, and then we'll get into the questions, is anybody who knows you, the idea that you are a bandwagon fan, oh my goodness. I mean, if there's a bandwagon, you're driving it.
Right.
So
yeah.
you certainly aren't jumping on the back of it. So while we're talking about, and I know you can't hear this enough, the defending Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks.
Ooh. I didn't know if it'd be tacky for me to wear my T-shirt or not, so I didn't. But next time I'll know better.
Sunny wears her Raiders shirt to every show we do. And, of course, that's going to change once she gets her ProFootballGuru.com shirt.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do have to tell Dana that my son is a huge Seahawks fan, and I had actually won a 12th man flag from the Seahawks through Twitter a few years ago, and it just sat on my dresser, just all folded up. I wanted nothing to do with it until this year when they were on their way, and so I gave him he has my 12th man flag hanging up in his room. So
good
there you go.
You. That's a good mommy moment. Football aside.
It was painful. All right. Sorry, Russ.
Oh, no, that's, well, how funny is it? How times have changed. Let's not forget that the last time the Raiders won the Super Bowl.
Don't go there. I will ban you. I will kick you out, Russ.
Wait a minute. Did you know what I was getting ready to tell you?
It's too many memories ago. Let's move on.
No, but there's a correlation. The last time the Raiders went to the Super Bowl and won was 1983.
Yes.
And they beat a division rival in the AFC Championship game, who at the time were the Seattle Seahawks. Okay.
Let's move on.
All right,
anyway.
All right, now let's get to modern football. And you can't have a Seattle Seahawks guest. Same thing like you can't have a San Francisco 49ers guest without asking one about the other, okay? So, and obviously the 49ers made some news today, Dana, obviously with the signing of Colin Kaepernick, which if you really think about it could mean big things for Russell Wilson a year from now as he gets ready to do his contract. But let me ask you this. Obviously the 49ers-Seahawks rivalry is something to watch. 3 times they played last year. Met in the NFC title game, as we know. Other than San Francisco, is there another team in the NFC that Seattle should be concerned with, or you feel is a very big challenge to them in terms of getting back to the Super Bowl?
I still think the 49ers are our challenge. I still think that that's the team that we're going to have to go through. However, the NFC West is the division. I mean, it's the division. It has the possibility and opportunity to put 3 teams in the playoffs, and I know that that's so hard to do, but especially once they expand the playoffs, look out if these teams stay competitive. Last season I was really looking toward the Arizona Cardinals. I really thought that they might be the ones, which they turned out being a 10-win team. They were fantastic, but I really felt that they might give everyone a little bit more run for their money, and they did. This season, I'm leaning a little bit more towards St. Louis. But I have to say that carefully because I said that last season too. I love Jeff Fisher as a coach. He's one of my favorite NFL coaches. And what bothered me was the inconsistencies that kind of came out of the Rams last year, injuries and all kinds of things. They get that under control this year, plus the way they drafted. Holy cow, the way they drafted. They could really, truly give both San Francisco and Seattle a serious run for their money. But to be totally bluntly honest with you, unless the sky falls, we're still going to have to go through San Francisco to get our division title.
I gotcha. No, I mean, it's hard not to think of what the Niners did. I think the Niners actually got better during this offseason. Arizona had obviously taken some hits with Carlos Dansby and Jeremiah Bell not being there, and obviously the suspension of Darrell Washington puts a big crimp in their plans. That's a team that relies on defense. Again, the Seahawks, and I have said this before, and it's funny, we were just kidding, but talking about the Raiders when they won the Super Bowl 18. Up until last year, that was one of the most complete performances I've ever seen a team in the Super Bowl. It was when the Raiders beat the Redskins 38-9. They beat them on offense. They beat them on defense. They beat them on special teams. It was a magnificent effort against a really good team, and ironically, against a team at that time that had set the record for points scored in a season. We saw that duplicated last year at the Meadowlands or Giants or MetLife Stadium, whatever you want to call it. Offense, defense, special teams. A lot got made of how the Seahawks shut down Peyton Manning. They shut down everybody. Okay? And again, from stem to stern, it was the most complete performance I saw in the Super Bowl in 30 years. Now, fast forward to 2014, we know how tough it is to repeat in this league. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what area of the team, Dana, do the Seattle Seahawks need to work on most before the season starts?
Oh, I think that you would get the same answer universally from, every 12 out there and probably all the coaches. It's the offensive line, without question. We are lucky that we have a quarterback that can run, that can duck down, become under 5 feet tall so people miss him, and run around in circles. But truly, he is forced to do that much more often than anyone would really want him to do that. And that is because of our offensive line. I will tell you that, we had quite a few injuries last year. Giacomini was injured. Russell Kuhn got injured. Max Unger was in. So, we can play the injury game, but that happens to every team. And with the Seahawks, they're so deep at every position except the offensive line. That is, I think, the one place that they were really struggling and really having a hard time with their depth. And so you can tell they really have tried to address that this year, and they really are focusing on that. Russell Wilson, he's known as a running quarterback. He says repeatedly he doesn't want to have to be a running quarterback. He likes to throw from the pocket. And so with our defense being our defense, and we really don't have to worry too much about that, and with our wide receiver core, even with the loss of Golden Tate, I think our wide receiver core actually got better this year, and I'm very excited to see how they come and how they play. Percy Harvin for a whole season will blow my brain. I'm so excited. But at the same time, those great things can only happen if Russell Wilson gets the time to do what he can do. We have Marshawn Lynch. We have a great running game. We have Robert Sherman and Christian Michael. Our running backs are so deep, it's crazy. We can't even play them all we want to.
No doubt.
But the offensive game, the passing game, can't take off the way that I think most of us really think that it can, until we get that offensive line under control.
I totally agree with you. I think that is the weak spot. You talked about Russell Okung, no relation. Russell Wilson, no relation. But Okung, Giacomini, Russell Okung missed half the season last year. He missed 8 games. Giacomini missed 7 games. I think a big problem with them last year is, and I'm a big believer that you don't need 5 first-round picks on the offensive line. You just need to keep your guys intact and get into rhythm. And offensive line is all rhythm and continuity, and there just wasn't a lot of continuity with that unit last year. So I totally agree. Now, the last question I want to ask you, it's another question I'm going to ask Sean O'Donnell when we have him on later, is I did a piece this week for Bleacher Report called The Face of the Franchise for every NFL team. It's the current face of the franchise. So for some of the teams who we're not totally sure of, people like Sonny, I'm sure there would be fans of the Raiders who would still insist that it's Al Davis, and I wouldn't necessarily question that if I was talking about the all-time face. My choice for the face of the current Seattle Seahawks is Richard Sherman, and I'd be curious of how you feel about that.
Well, as he's my favorite player on the team, I'm not going to argue with you. I own one Seahawks jersey, and it is a Richard Sherman jersey that I bought 2 years ago. Love the guy. However, I do disagree with the face of the franchise. I think it depends on how you see this team. If this is a team that you hate, which that group of people has greatly grown over the last year.
Nobody likes success.
Nobody does.
Especially when it's somebody else's team.
Exactly. So I think that if it's a team that you dislike or a team that you hate or whatever, Richard Sherman is the face of the team. But if you truly look at the true fan base, who they have representing them at almost every term, it's going to be Russell Wilson. He really is. Yeah, it really is. It really is the guy who they put forth first. Whenever it's a charity event, whenever it's, a commercial event. He's the one that, as much as we all love Richard Sherman and I adore him, and Earl Thomas to a certain extent too, because he's huge in this fan base. But I think that when people think of the Seahawks, they think of Pete Carroll, and then they think of Russell Wilson. So I would say Russell Wilson is probably who the Seahawks would want the face of it to be, and he does an amazing job of it.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think the more times you can come on our show and say the word Russell, actually works out to my benefit, so my ploy did work.
I don't think it's going to start trending, though, Russ. I'm sorry.
Kidding? Listen, Ruffles will trend before Russell retrend.
When I hear Russell, I think of the Fat Albert character. But
Aww.
I think of Brussels sprouts, but that's okay.
Oh, there you go.
Those are nasty.
It's funny. It was funny when I was writing the piece. I brought up Russell Wilson. I brought up Pete Carroll. I was almost tempted, and again in the intro of the piece, was to name the 12th man the face of the franchise, but it was too many faces, as I explained. Could you make a case for the 12th man being the face of the franchise of the Seattle Seahawks?
Absolutely, without question. Absolutely. I think that, especially after last season with the whole loudest fan thing and all of that hype and the true impact that the 12th man has on, or the 12s as they like to call us now, the 12s have on the game itself. It is hard to find a fan base that has that. I know I'm a fan, and so maybe I'm tooting my own horn, but it's hard to find another fan base that has that large of an impact on a game itself. There's bigger fan bases. I think the Dallas Cowboys have one of the biggest fan bases, out there, and certainly a lot of very proud. The Cleveland Brown fans they're very proud fans and very respected fans. But when it comes to that team, we are truly, and it's not just in our heads. Some people I think we are truly considered part of that team, and I think that was really solidified when they visited the White House and Barack Obama actually mentioned the fan base, because you didn't see that happening for other teams before.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, and in case I've missed something the last couple of years, the only number retired by the Seattle Seahawks is number 12.
It is
in tribute to the 12th man.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it was retired clear back in 1984. So that's how long this team has been. They are very cognizant that they're up there kind of on an island up in the Pacific Northwest, and this fan base has kept them going to the point now where they're having to expand CenturyLink Field, and there's hardly any single tickets for the games because there's so many season ticket holders, and so really they get it. And the brilliant business mind of Paul Allen and John Snyder, for that account, has decided to completely embrace it and make them feel like they're part of the team.
And I think that's great. And I think that I'm sorry, Sunny, go ahead.
No, it's just because, I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm on the Eastern Washington side, so you get British Columbia, you get all of Eastern Washington, you get Idaho, you get Montana, you get Oregon. So there's such a huge community from which they can pull from. I know that it was like this city where I'm at literally stopped pretty much on Super Bowl Sunday. So they get it. It's not just Seattle; it's the entire region of 12th man.
Mm-hmm. And I can honestly say, sitting here in Connecticut, with the Seahawks, if they are playing a home game, a lot of times I'll just turn down the sound on my television and open up the window, and I can actually hear the fans from the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, whatever. They don't compare to the black hole. But anyways, thanks Dana for joining us. Why don't you let everybody know where people can connect up with you, find some of your work.
Absolutely. Well, probably the easiest and fastest way to find me is definitely on Twitter. I use Twitter strictly for football, so I am on there quite a bit with a lot to talk about, and that's at DanaOG. And then you can also find me at NFLfemale.com. And I write articles for them, for the Seattle Seahawks and other things. And then once again at thefootballeducator.com, which is former Broncos GM Ted Sundquist's website, which is amazing and has so much knowledge. And I'm a fan contributor for him.
And let me just a quick shout out to Scott Scowcroft checking in. He is in Seattle. He's happy and delighted to hear us talking about the Super Bowl champ Seattle Seahawks. He's cool. How cool is that? Thanks, Scott, for tuning in, and thanks, Dana, for joining us. We appreciate you joining in.
Thank you so much, and you guys have a great night, and I'll see you in Canton.
Yes, you will. Yes. We'll see every sign-off now. It's going to be I'll see you soon.
Absolutely, because it's very true. Thanks, you guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dana.
Bye-bye.
Well, it was great to hear from Dana. She does a great job on NFL Female and the other things she does. Very passionate, and the knowledge of her team is unquestioned. And we'll allude again. The piece that I wrote about the face of each franchise. Go on Bleacher Report. Tell me what you think. We're always open for comments, and we always respond. But I'm going to go back to the Seahawks for a second, because the one thing we didn't get into Dana with, because it's a little too early. We're still June, and rosters have to be sorted out and so on. It's been about a decade now since we saw a team repeat as a Super Bowl champion. You have to go back to the New England Patriots when they did it following the 2003 and 2004 seasons. So what do we think? I mean, is Seattle as capable of anybody? You hear people throw out the word dynasty already, even though they've won one title, and I think they do that because this is a young team built in an extraordinary way through undrafted free agents and good picks, and they haven't spent a lot of money and so on. Sonny, I'll ask you, what do you think the prospects of a Seattle Seahawks who, we waited a long time for them to win a Super Bowl, the 19th current franchise to win a Super Bowl. What do you think of them and their chances this year of repeating?
It's hard to go against them with their depth, but their depth did take a little bit of a hit in the offseason. Yes, they've signed some of their core players to long-term deals. So, but that NFC West, man, Russ, it just Dana alluded to the Rams and how well they drafted, how deep they are. It's hard to count against them, but I don't know if I don't see them doing what they did last year. What do you think?
Well, what's interesting about the division they're in, and let's not forget, last year, 2013, they were 13-3. The Niners were 12-4. The Cardinals were 10-6, and the Rams were 7-9. I bring up all those numbers because in 2010, the 7-9 Seattle Seahawks won the division. So it's amazing what inflation does. 1 year 7-9 gets you a division title. 3 years later, it gets you 3 games out of third place in the division. So the strides that group has made, and we saw that with the AFC West last year too. The strides they made. They sent 3 teams to the playoffs in their conference. It's tough to repeat regardless of how good you are. I mean, sometimes things just have to break your way. What's funny though is I think the one advantage they have, Sonny, is the fact that they do play in a division that's tough. There is no chance for them to fall asleep at the wheel, right? Because it's going to be so hard.
Week in, week out.
Right. And here's something very, very unique about Seattle's schedule this year. And I'm not a strength of schedule person because it's almost impossible to forecast. In their first 10 games of the year, they play 1 division opponent. In their final 6 games, they play 5. They play the 49ers twice, I think, in a 3-week span, including Thanksgiving night. So I think Seattle, regardless, is going to be the team that decides the division just because of the way their schedule sets up.
Well, injuries will always play a part in that, but there's another division we wanted to discuss, and I think it might just be as tough, almost as tough as the AFC West, the NFC West. How about some where Cincinnati and Cleveland are playing, Russ?
Well, the AFC North is a division that, with the exception of the Cleveland Browns, everybody's either 500. I mean, you go back and look at the last 3 years. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, 8-8 or better. The Browns are kind of the disappointment there and so on. But I mean, this is a team up until last year. They went 5 years in a row, sending at least 2 teams to the playoffs. 1 year they sent 3 teams. It's always tough. It's always physical. And it's funny. We talked about Seattle being one of the 19th current franchise to win the Super Bowl. That means 13 have not won a Super Bowl yet. One of those is the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been to a couple of Super Bowls, and if they can only not play the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl,
right.
which they always seem to do, and so on. But this is a very talented team, and in this day and age of free agency where depth is hard to find, Cincinnati is a deep team. And that's why they are in the playoffs the last 3 years, which, by the way, Sonny, is a record. The Bengals had never made the playoffs 3 years in a row until last year. This is a team that's excellent on defense. It's going to have some changes on both sides of the ball in terms of coordinators. Why listen to me wax poetically about the Cincinnati Bengals when we can bring in somebody who knows the Bengals left, right, up, down, here and there? Sean O'Donnell, who many people know from the Bleacher Report. Welcome to First and 60, Sean. It's great to see you again. It was about a year ago, about this time, or maybe a couple months back, that you and I were sitting and discussing NFL draft in New York.
That's right. Last up there at the Bleacher Report party up there. This is a pretty interesting situation, to say the least. I couldn't make it up back to New York this year. Too busy with the work, but good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Sean, when you talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, inevitably the first name that comes up is Andy Dalton, the quarterback. Andy Dalton's in the final year of his contract. He comes off, disappointed, but even though he's led the team to the playoffs 3 years in a row, he's been, somewhat of a disappointment in those playoffs. We know the Bengals drafted a quarterback this year. What do you see as the future for Andy Dalton, and what does he need to do this year?
It's interesting with Andy Dalton. You look at a guy who's night and day in terms of regular season production against playoff production. Last season, although he was a little inconsistent throughout the regular season, he set franchise records in passing yards and passing touchdowns. At the same time, he threw an all-time or a career high of 20 interceptions as well. But you can see that the promise is there. However, after 3 years, I think you want to expect more from a quarterback if he is going to be a franchise quarterback in the playoffs. And when you look at his postseason numbers, Andy Dalton in 3 postseason attempts finally threw his first playoff touchdown last season against the Chargers, and that went along with his career 6 postseason interceptions. So, needless to say, his production really hasn't quite been there in the playoffs, and despite that touchdown pass against the Chargers last year, some ill-timed interceptions absolutely doomed the Bengals late in the game. And once again, for 3 years running, they were once and done. So really what the Bengals need is to see not only for Andy Dalton to lead them back to the postseason for the 4th consecutive season, which, as you mentioned earlier, Russ, would even be another franchise record, just building upon their previous 3-year stretch. But he needs to win some playoff games, is what Andy Dalton needs to do. He needs to show that he can make the right decisions on a big stage and lead the team in that kind of high-pressure situation. And I do believe that the Bengals bringing in, dare I say, a similar quarterback in A.J. McCarron through the draft, Andy Dalton's playoff struggles, I think, was one of the reasons that the Bengals brass made the decision to bring in McCarron, because of McCarron's glowing collegiate record in in big games. Basically, he's got plenty of experience in national championships, and he's performed well there. And he'll be a guy that can really push Andy Dalton if he doesn't really come through in the postseason this year.
I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball. Andy Dalton or Marvin Lewis? Who's the person that you hear taking more of the brunt, for lack of a better word, when it comes to the franchise and the playoff failures? And let's also preface this by reminding people, Marvin Lewis has been the second longest tenured coach in the league with the same team, by the way, next to Bill Belichick. People forget that. We know he hasn't won a playoff game, but this is also a franchise that hasn't won a playoff game since they used to call Riverfront Stadium home in 1990, and Boomer Esiason was the quarterback, and they played Houston, the Oilers, not the Texans. So it's been a while. So, I mean, to throw it all on two guys, but you know how things are. Marvin's 0-5 in the playoffs, despite getting there his share of times. Andy, you just talked about, and so on. When you hear people playing the game that sweeps the country every year after a team loses, the blame game, who's the name you hear more?
There's a few names being thrown around regarding the Bengals. Obviously, you hit two of them right there, Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis. Another name that people love to throw around is owner Mike Brown. He's made some, I guess, should we say, controversial personnel decisions in the past, which led to all of those years of really Cincinnati being, shall we say, the doormat of the NFL. Late 90s, early 2000s. As far as I'm concerned, I can't really put the brunt of it on Marvin Lewis. He's done absolute wonders with the Cincinnati Bengals since becoming the head coach in 2003. In just his first season alone, with John Kitna at quarterback, the team went 8-8. Yeah. And that was, a great feat in its own. And then after struggling through some offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator changes and deficiencies there, he made some great decisions, brought in Mike Zimmer, who completely revamped that defense. They were successful in turnover ratios before Mike Zimmer came to Cincinnati, but they were never really known as kind of a hard-nosed physical defense, which is really what the AFC North is all about. And Mike Zimmer brought that to Cincinnati, and that was all Marvin Lewis is doing, is making the decision to bring him in. So I guess what I'm trying to say is Marvin Lewis has made a great deal of personnel decisions, whether it be in the coaching department or in the player department. Cincinnati's had some phenomenal drafts under Marvin Lewis, and I believe
yes, they have.
Mike Brown has really kind of finally relinquished some of the control of the team and the decision-making to Marvin Lewis, and I believe that's why we've seen some nice changes in that area. So, as far as the playoffs go, the quarterback, sure, that's always the guy that you want to look at. If the quarterback doesn't perform, team doesn't win, a lot of that can fall on Andy Dalton. And that if you put a gun to my head and say, pick one guy to blame for the playoff losses, it's going to have to fall on Andy Dalton, and the numbers show it. It's some pretty poor decision making on his part, which has ultimately doomed the Bengals in in 3 playoff appearances, despite some solid defensive efforts in all 3 of those games.
Sean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sonny.
No, let me ask you about one of those players on that stellar defense. I am an Arizona State fan, so I got to see. I mean, although I'm in the Northwest, I would pay attention to the Arizona State football games when they were on TV, and one of the stars was Vontaze Burfict, now with the Bengals. Went undrafted, had a promising rookie year, Pro Bowl last year. It almost seems like the sky could be the limit for him, but what is your take on what do you expect to see from Burfict going into the season?
I'm an absolute huge fan of Vontaze Burfict. I think he plays with such a high motor, such a high level of intensity. It's actually refreshing to see a player come in earning very little money, being undrafted, and to play with that kind of enthusiasm and the drive to get better and to continue improving. And Burfict really proved his doubters wrong when he came to Cincinnati. Personal fouls were a huge issue for him in Arizona State. Some behavioral issues. And he came in with a chip on his shoulder, looking to make a name for himself, and he's done absolutely that. I think it's safe to say that we could call Vontaze Burfict one of the premier linebackers in the NFL today. And I expect another huge year from him, and I expect Vontaze Burfict to get quite a lucrative contract going forward with Cincinnati Bengals.
Sean, you were talking earlier before about Mike Zimmer. Obviously, he's not there anymore. Jay Gruden is not there anymore. So the Bengals will be going into the season, obviously, with two new coordinators. But I'm going to ask you about two guys on each side of the ball in the trenches. Anthony Collins signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not a guy who ever started 16 games for them, but a guy who could, obviously, when he played, certainly stood out last year. And Michael Johnson is also with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I believe Cincinnati plays Tampa this year, so they'll be able to, renew acquaintances. But let me ask you this. We talk about the depth of the Cincinnati Bengals. How do they handle the loss of both of those gentlemen?
Well, I tell you, it's especially on the offensive side of the ball, the loss of Collins is, I think, which may be surprising for some people to hear, may affect the Bengals more than the loss of Michael Johnson. The Bengals don't have a fantastic offensive line situation going into the 2014 season. Last year, they had one of the top-rated offensive lines in the NFL, but there's a lot of changes going into this year. The loss of Collins is a big one. The Bengals, they got rid of Kyle Cook, their center, over the offseason. Clint Bowling is currently recovering from an ACL injury, and he's likely to miss all of training camp and probably the preseason as well. Andrew Whitworth, the left tackle, is getting a little long in the tooth.
I like him as a player, though.
Oh no, he's a terrific player. He really is. So especially the left side, I want to say, of the offensive line is highly unsettled right now. You've got former undrafted free agent Trevor Robinson assuming the center position in place of Kyle Cook. Andrew Whitworth is holding his position at left tackle, although he did, because of Collins' performance out there at tackle last season, Whitworth slid into guard towards the end of the year and performed pretty well there. But Whitworth's going to have to be back out at tackle right now. They really don't. The Bengals really don't have the leniency to move him around. So right now, with Bowling missing time, we're looking at guys like Mike Pollock and recent undrafted rookie free agent Trey Hopkins out of Texas to split some time at the left guard position throughout training camp, throughout the preseason. And really, if Bowling's not ready to go week one for Cincinnati, which he very well may not be, you're going to see a very inexperienced left guard starting for Bengals offensive line that's going to try to keep Andy Dalton upright. So the loss of Collins really, I think, will play a big factor in Cincinnati this year, especially if they get hit by the injury bug. It's not as deep as an offensive line as it once was. On the defensive side of the ball, the loss of Michael Johnson will certainly be noticed in Cincinnati this year. Maybe not so much in a pass rushing perspective, but Michael Johnson, what a lot of people don't understand is he's phenomenal against the run. And I think that will be missed a lot. I think Robert Geathers will probably have to pick up a lot of slack in that department. Not known for his pass rushing prowess, but a very solid run defender. We're also looking at the production here of how's Margus Hunt coming along. Rookie from last year, didn't really see much on-field time. We knew he was going to be a very raw prospect coming out of the draft. Took a lot of time to develop. And, we'll see through training camp this year, through the preseason, if he's ready to take that next step and start to produce defensively for this team. I don't believe that he'll be ready to be a full-time starter this year. But if he shows enough production, I think that he'll be able to get in there as a solid rotational piece. Then you've got Wallace Gilberry in there as well, who's been a great addition for the Bengals. And rounding it out, bringing Geno Atkins back from his ACL injury last year is absolutely going to be huge in this team. The guy demands double teams constantly in the middle of the line, which helps free up defensive ends. So I don't think the impact will be felt quite as heavily on the defensive side of the ball with the loss of Michael Johnson, especially once Atkins is back and healthy and back in top form. But like I said, on the offensive side of the ball, that the loss of Collins could be significant for Cincinnati.
No, I can't help myself here because I know Pat Sims obviously is not with the team anymore from a couple of years ago. How funny was it that you had a defensive tackle tandem of Pat and Geno's? For those people who know their cheesesteaks in Philadelphia, what are the odds, Sean?
And it's funny because I don't live too far away from Philadelphia, so that was a terrific reference right there, Russell. I got to hand it to you, man.
Well, I'm actually on my way to Philadelphia tomorrow, and if you invest any stock in Pat and Geno's, it would be a good time to call your broker. I'm just letting you know now. So
Nice.
I'll wrap it up here, Sean, with one question. The same question I asked Dana about the Seahawks. I did a piece this week for Bleacher Report. And it's about the face of the franchise, the current face of the franchise for all 32 clubs. In the case of the Cincinnati Bengals, I picked Marvin Lewis because of his tenure with the team. Obviously players like Andy Dalton and A.J. Green and Geno Atkins and Leon Hall. I mean, it's a talented team. Who do you think is the current face of the franchise of the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, Russell, I got to start out first by saying I read that column that you wrote, and it was fantastic, man. That was some brilliant work for everybody that's watching out there. Definitely read it on Bleacher Report. Great work as always, Russell. And I love your.
Thank you. And I see you got my check, so I appreciate a shameless plug. There you go.
And be sure to click on the link after the opening page for the segue into the first team slide. It's a terrific music video. Anyway.
Sonny, what did I tell you? Smiling faces sometimes.
It's good stuff. But you know what? I'm thinking about the Bengals roster, and I actually thought about this question before I came on here today because I really wanted to give you a different answer from what you wrote in the article, but I completely 100% agree with you that the face of the franchise is Marvin Lewis. Because you look at the Bengals roster right now, they're a very talented roster, but they don't have that one guy that really stands out and is kind of an in-your-face kind of guy, a spokesperson for the team, so to speak. You could say,
Perfect. Perfect.
So, I mean, a lot of people might go with a guy like A.J. Green, just because he's a phenomenal player, great athlete, but he's a quiet leader. He's the guy that lines up first in practice and shows the receivers by example. He's not a vocal leader. The same thing can be.
No, but he is quite the example, as we all know. So
he sure is a great example. And that's just kind of how the Cincinnati Bengals are built right now. They don't have, one of those guys that jumps off the screen at you and says, "Hey, watch me, look at me," kind of thing. So, yeah, the guy that's in the spotlight is Marvin Lewis and how he's just dramatically turned this team around over his tenure in Cincinnati. I think Bengals fans, and some of them might, not enjoy me saying this, have been kind of spoiled of late. If you follow the team back through the good old days there after their nice surge in the 80s, the team did absolutely nothing for such a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And they've been fantastic under Marvin Lewis. And yes, it's frustrating because they have such a talented team and they haven't been able to get that playoff win. But consider the alternative of going back to what they once were before Marvin Lewis came aboard. And I'm sure most would say, yeah, sure, I'd rather the excitement of at least contending and getting the playoffs than finishing 2-14 every season. So there you have it. It's Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, you think of the success that he has had, and again, there's going to always be critics, very much like Marty Schottenheimer, who had trouble winning playoff games. I obviously never got to the Super Bowl. I'm one of those people who believes the only way you lose playoff games is actually get in the playoffs. So I totally agree with you. Consider the alternatives of never being in contention. And listen, the AFC North is something to behold. Obviously, the Browns have not held up their end of the bargain, but in some ways it's understandable because of the consistency, especially recently of the Bengals, and obviously for years with the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Speaking of consistent, you did a consistent job tonight, Sean. I
Thank you,
really
sir.
appreciate
Yeah.
having you on. It's great to see you again, and you can say that
Absolutely.
literally when you're doing a Google Plus Hangout. There's my shameless plug. There's my social shout out,
There you go.
Sonny. Sean, before you leave us, tell us where everybody can find you and all the great work you do.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me on here, guys. Really had a blast. Hopefully, we can do it again soon.
Sure, we'll call you in 10 minutes.
Sounds good. Well, if you're looking for me, aside from this Google Hangout, you can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Donnell NFL, and you can find my work on Bleacher Report. Just Google my name and Bleacher Report, I guess, is the easiest way to track that down. I work for Bleacher Report's breaking news team, so not only am I covering the Cincinnati Bengals in the NFL, but lots of other sports as well. The Belmont Stakes is right around the corner, so if you want my horse rating insider advice, check it out.
Thanks for joining us, Sean. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks a
Sean,
lot.
see you soon.
See you soon. Take care.
Alrighty, Russ. I think the last time I checked, the score was 2-2.
There you go. Hockey, right?
I think so.
Right.
Unless
See,
one
I'm
of our
sure a
viewers
lot of
wants to
people-
correct me.
And I'm sure a lot of people will want to get back to the game and so on. But, you just said, what's in a number, Sonny? What's in a number? Okay? And a number is a big part of your social shout-out tonight.
Yes, it is, and let me see if I can do this correctly this time. Let's hope I can do a screen share correctly. And it was announced today, the logo. Can you see that one, Russ?
Absolutely.
Yes, I did it right this time. The Super Bowl tweeted out, shared on multiple social media platforms, the logo for Super Bowl 50. No Roman numeral from what we can tell, but it is the Lombardi Trophy with the big fat golden number 50. Now, that was a talk on Twitter today, was that there is no Roman numeral, but according to, I believe he is the NFL PR in public relations for the NFL, there is a Roman numeral in the design. And as you and I were looking at this, Russ, the only thing I can think of is the lower half of the Lombardi Trophy and this, maybe? Or
No, I guess, as I said to you earlier, I always had trouble finding the rake in Highlights Magazine. I'm still trying to, if am I missing something, and so on. But for people, obviously, for football fans, the Super Bowl has always been done in Roman numerals. The
is
league
it this L? I think we were talking, you said this L earlier, too?
It could be. It certainly could be, because that looks a little different than the other letters if there was a different L. I mean, it's a tough call. Now, so people know, because I heard it discussed in other places, the Super Bowl will go back to Roman numerals starting with 51.
Yes.
And so on. So this is an exception to the rule.
But there were people having fun with this because of that L, like Ryan Nanny of the Celebrity Hot Tub. Everyone knows Super Bowl L is reserved for Buffalo. Oh man, poor Buffalo. But I think this one might be my favorite. Since 50 is L in Roman numerals, I wonder if the NFL didn't want its players flashing this all year.
Oh, I'm sure that. Well, it's funny. I'm also willing to bet, for the sake of typographical errors, SUPERBOWLL.
Oh, there you go.
I'm sure there were a lot of things that they took into consideration, but I think it's cool because, and I'm one of those guys who loves the Roman numerals. I think it adds a little prestige. I think it achieves exactly what it was. But the fact that they're making an exception, I think, enhances the history of the Roman numerals to begin with. So here we go. We're going to have the Super Bowl 50, which that means when you and I do this show in 51 years, I have no doubt that it'll be Super Bowl 100, because if you're going to do 50, you have to do 100.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, and one more thing I did want to bring up. Since our last show, the passing of Tampa Bay Buccaneers owner Malcolm Glazer, instrumental in the Buccaneers' success over the years. Although, because I do pay attention to some of the talk with soccer. Manchester United fans. They also own Manchester United. They're not real thrilled with the Glazer family, but I wanted to get right before we close. Share some of your thoughts about the Glazers and the Buccaneers.
Well, the first thing I thought of is I want to say in less than a calendar year now, we have lost, I believe, 3 NFL owners. Bud Adams passed away late last year, the owner of the Tennessee Titans, the original Houston Oilers. A couple months ago, obviously, the death of Ralph Wilson, Pro Football Hall of Famer, no longer with us, and now Malcolm Glazer. And it's sad to think, more importantly than anything else, it's sad to think about them leaving their own families and so on. And but obviously, legacies far more important than what they've done in terms of football. When I see things like that, I think of people, and people losing their grandfather or people losing their father. Not so much that a prominent person has passed away. I think that's something that we often forget sometimes. Because they are bigger. These owners are bigger than life. It's like they're celebrities in their own way. But there's no denying the impact that Malcolm Glazer made, along with the other men with their teams and so on. And again, it drops your heart a little because somebody lost a family member, and also somebody. For those of us who love this game, somebody who is very pivotal in putting together a franchise. Now, whether you like the franchise or the franchise is not overly successful, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and a lot of passion that goes into this by the owner and their families and their fan base and so on. So, obviously, a sad time for the Buccaneers fans.
Yep, and we've come to the end of the show, Russ. Why don't you let everybody know how they can connect with you, find you, in this thing we call the interwebs.
Interwebs, I like it, Spidey. Bax Football Guru is the Twitter handle. Pro Football Guru is the Facebook page. ProFootballGuru.com is a web page. And as we were mentioning earlier, we are selling ProFootballGuru.com t-shirts. You can click on the merchandise tab on the front page of my website. They're $15 a piece, $5 shipping and handling, $20 total. 3 of the $15 goes to the American Cancer Society. And as we also stated, Andrew Fishbane, The Fish 1969, follow him on Twitter. Everything that we make for cancer through the month of June is going to be matched for him penny by penny, and we have every intentions on having him having to get a second mortgage.
Yes, we definitely do that. We'll do that, and we'll be talking with him in Canton. We're hitting the road. If it wasn't against copyright laws, I'd be singing Willie Nelson on the road again or something like that. Not Hit the Road Jack, of course, but connect with me. Of course, after tonight, you might be saying "Hit the road, Sonny," and don't you come back no more. And as I've got kids coming into the door, it's time to say goodbye. Find me on Twitter at CadChica, here on Google plus Sonny Cadwallader. Also find me on Instagram, CadChica, as well. And we'll just connect in 2 weeks. We'll be at our regular time on a Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific and Arizona time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And by that time, I will be a year older. Thanks, everyone, for joining in, and we'll talk to you soon.